the Sega Genesis.
Let me retweet that if my app will work. Oh, come on. Okay. That is retweeted.
All right.
So yeah, I've got all the tabs open and everything, so
All right.
I'm all set.
I'm good to go too. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Greetings, programs, and we are back for another episode of the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
And my name is Derek Diamond.
So how has your week been?
And not too bad. Started to get into the Christmas movie watching.
Yeah.
Now that we're now that we're past Thanksgiving, I'm very hardcore in the sense that Christmas time to me does not start until the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. It
So
doesn't start until Hans Gruber falls off the Nakatomi Plaza.
that too. I haven't got around to watching that movie yet, but it is on the list. I think the highlight of it, I'm sure you heard about the whole debacle with people trying to get tickets for the new Spider-Man.
Yeah, I don't know the details, though.
So basically, all the major theater chains, mostly AMC and Regal, their sites were crashing because so many people were trying to buy tickets for that movie when they went on sale. So I pulled the app up about 5 minutes before they actually went on sale. They went on sale Sunday night at 11 o'clock Central Time. So I pull the app up and it puts me in a wait for, I think it was 5 minutes. So not too terribly long. But the problem was when the wait time was over, it let me pick the time that I wanted, but it wasn't pulling up the layout of the room where you could pick your seats. So I had to keep refreshing the app multiple times, but it was running so slow that when I would pick my seats, it would say they weren't available. And
That sucks.
it took me about I'd say 15 minutes or so, but I did get tickets. So I'm going to get to go opening night, which I'm really excited about.
That's cool.
I'm just ready for the movie to come out. Like I don't want to see any more commercials. I don't want to
Yeah.
read anything else about it. They obviously got my money. So I'll be going opening night.
See,
So
my theater is doing a weird thing now where they're only doing assigned seating for like one showing. They'll have like 4 or 5 different theater. Like I went to see Ghostbusters Afterlife last weekend, and the weekend before, I mean, and I had to wait till they only had like 4 showings that day of where you could actually pick your seats, and the rest of it was just regular general admission. All the other showings, I'm like, I don't know. I've been spoiled. I don't want to do that anymore. Because the last movie I went to, I don't remember what I went to before that. I had actually bought my tickets at the little kiosk inside, and it just spit out tickets without giving me a seat. So I took it up to the ticket taker, and he's like, theater, 10 to your right or whatever. And I was like, well, what seats are we? He's like, oh, you're going to have to talk to the box office. I'm like, well, shit. That's the whole reason I went inside and used the kiosk, because I didn't want to have to wait in line. So I went outside, I waited in the line, and I got up to the front and showed. I was like, we don't have seats. And she's like, oh, we don't do that for some of these showings. I'm like, well, that's nice to know. And now we're just back to Wild West of trying to find a seat in the theater. Like, no, I don't want to do that anymore.
that makes no sense to why you would do assigned seatings for certain showings, but
I
then not
know.
for others.
That's
Like that, I don't
weird.
understand that at all.
It makes no sense. I don't get it.
The crazy thing is about this upcoming Spider-Man movie is I believe it has already passed the amount of tickets that were pre-sold for Infinity War.
Jeez.
It hasn't made it to Endgame level yet, and I don't know that it will. If COVID weren't a factor, I think it would. But that's a whole what if
Yeah.
discussion. But I did finally see Eternals a couple of days ago.
I still haven't seen it, and you want to know something? I really, honestly don't care. I still haven't even seen Shang-Chi yet.
Oh, Shang-Chi's great.
I know,
think
I
you'd
hear
really
it's great,
like it.
but I'm not in any hurry to watch those movies.
Eternals was okay. Like I didn't dislike it, but it also wasn't my favorite Marvel movie. But I do appreciate them trying something different
Yeah.
because we've seen the Marvel formula now for a long time. So I like that they deviated from that a little bit. But I think what really hurt it was that you introduce so many new characters because the Eternals are a team of like 10 people.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of time to really get to know all these characters. So I think it would have benefited more from being like a Disney Plus show
Yeah.
and have, maybe 12 episodes and have one focus on each character and then they come together and the final two are, them trying to solve whatever issue they're having. So,
Yeah, just
but it was all right.
I don't know. Just it's not really. I don't know. I'm not in any hurry to watch it.
Yeah, I would say at this point, if you haven't seen it in theaters yet, just wait for it to come out on Disney Plus, which I believe is going to
Yeah.
be mid-January. So
That's not
and
bad.
we're already in December, so you won't have
Yeah.
that much longer to wait.
I did watch Ernest Saves Christmas on Disney Plus
Nice.
this weekend. Yeah, I wasn't feeling great all weekend, and wanted something funny to watch. And I was like, man, I haven't seen that. I saw this movie in the theater when I was a kid. I'm like, this is probably going to be awful, so I watched it anyway, and I had a good time.
But those movies are great for that.
Yeah, they're just dumb. They're just
Yeah.
dumb fun.
Yeah. I'm a little biased towards Ernest Goes to Jail. That was my personal favorite.
Yeah, when I go back and watch Ernest Goes to Camp too, I have to find that one streaming somewhere.
It's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, those movies are so dumb, but I don't know why I enjoy them. They're just, I don't know. They're just weird.
Yeah, they're fun though.
But we got a good bit of news to get to tonight. You ready?
Yes.
All of tonight's stories were submitted to us by you, the listeners, specifically Armez Jackson, Mr. Wally Phelps, the official fact checker, and of course, Carlos Longoria. I Am the Rampage sends us these stories. So if you'd like to, if you have a story you'd like us to cover, send them to nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. The first one up tonight is from PCGamer.com. A Marvel MMO is coming from DC Universe Online Studio, City of Heroes lead dev. An unannounced MMORPG based on a Marvel IP is in the works at Dimensional Inc., the studio behind DC Universe Online and subsidiary of Daybreak Games Studio. The game's development will be led by Jack Emmert, who designed City of Heroes and who currently leads development on DCUO. Project is a long-term one, so don't expect to hear more until 2023 at the soonest. Daybreak has had a lot of success as a publisher of MMOs, especially the ones that have sustained an interested audience, despite never rising to the top of the heap. They are publisher of the Lord of the Rings Online, which is getting a revamp along with the new Amazon TV series. And DC Universe Online is also scheduled to get an upgrade with a graphics upgrade and the largest expansion content to date scheduled for 2023. So I don't know about you, but I loved City of Heroes back in the day. I'm still a champion of wanting to be able to play City of Heroes, but man, if those developers are developing a Marvel Universe Online, I am so there.
I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, we were just, talking at length about Marvel and specifically the MCU. So I think the Marvel property is perfect for this kind of game. The only thing that worries me personally, I love these types of games, but I get addicted to them
Yeah, me
fairly
too.
easily. So it's like I want to play them, but I have so much other stuff that I'm doing that like I can't personally dedicate any time to them. So I don't know that I will play it. I would certainly like to, but I this has the potential to be huge
Mhm.
because we all know the popularity of Marvel, and there's just so much you could do with this type of genre.
Well, my biggest thing with City of Heroes back in the day is they had the best character creator. Um, they had the best character creator of any MMO or game really of all time. That's what I spent most of my time doing was making new characters because they had so many different skill sets you could do and then just what you could make your characters look like, whatever you could dream up, you could make your character look like. And I would just spend hours making new characters, running them to like level 5 and then deleting them and making another one, and just had pages upon pages of different characters that I created. And if they have the same character creation that they did for City of Heroes, oh man, I weep for the time I'm going to be missing when this game comes out.
When you got to think of all the different things you could add to your characters, you just go down the library
But see,
of Marvel properties.
here's the thing: Marvel, and I think DC at the time too, had a problem with City of Heroes because City of Heroes had power sets that you could do for your heroes that were a little too close to some of the Marvel characters. Like you could have Wolverine claws and things like that, and that stuff got yanked out of the game because Marvel was getting litigious. So imagine now you could actually create Wolverine. You could have, imagine a Wolverine, or imagine having a Spider-Man type character where you could wall crawl and web, web sling, but could also have, Wolverine claws or like any kind of combination of character you could think of.
Or his healing ability.
I'm so excited just thinking about this. Like,
Oh,
oh,
the possibilities are damn near endless.
imagine a Hulk character with Wolverine claws. Like,
Oh
it
my
it's
god.
over with.
Yeah,
It's done.
pretty much. Now, I'll be curious to see what more comes out of this because the article says don't expect to hear more until 2023, but I'm sure we'll get little updates
Yeah, I
every
imagine if
now
they're
and then.
just now getting started on it, it's going to be at least late 2024, 2025 before we even get a playable beta version of this game.
But it'll be worth the wait, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Our next story comes to us from videogameschronicle.com, and this is really cool. Sony could be planning a PlayStation mobile controller. The patent, which was published this week by SIE's Japanese division, describes a system for playing games on a device coupled with two controller grips. The controller, which resembles PS4's DualShock 4 rather than PS5's newer DualSense, is described as a left side grip portion and a right side grip portion, gripped by the left and right hands of the user. The included drawings of the device omit a shaft portion that can be tilted by the user and detect the tilting direction and tilting amount of the portion. And there's basically a drawing at the top of the article that shows what it's essentially going to look like. This, I think, is another no-brainer. Like I would love
Yeah.
to have something like this, for mobile-based games. If you want a controller like this, I think the PlayStation controller is the perfect one to model it after.
Well, I think this is basically Sony's answer to not only the Switch as far as being able to mobile game, but
Mm-hmm.
also they're going to get their ass handed to them this generation but because of Game Pass. So if they come up with something that's equal to Game Pass on the Sony side, it's game over. I mean, if they can perfect it to where you could play it on all your PlayStation games on a smartphone, mobile style, dude,
knockout punch.
Yeah, exactly. Like you couldn't ask for anything. This is what people want from Sony right here.
I mean, it's like I said, it's I think a brilliant move by them to do, and I would love. Let's see here.
Because there's
It said,
already a thing like this called the Backbone. I don't know if you've heard of it,
mm-mm.
but it's like a Xbox style controller that you clamp to your smartphone or I think tablet or whatever. But it's basically so you can play Game Pass on your mobile device and use like an Xbox style controller. It's called the Backbone, and man, this is Sony's answer to that, and I'm here for it.
It says here, if such a device comes to fruition, it could be used in conjunction with a smartphone to play PlayStation games via remote play or via the cloud, similar to how third-party controller grips can currently be used to play streamed Xbox games. So this this could be a real game changer, no pun intended,
Yeah,
for Sony. Because like you said, this generation, they're at a huge disadvantage because of Game Pass, and
yeah.
they got to do something.
Well, they're gonna have to get their game streaming working better because I tried to stream games on with PlayStation. Not View. Is it View or PlayStation Now? And
Yeah.
I tried to do some game streaming, and it's not great. I kept getting disconnected from the servers and everything. So they're gonna have to get all that tech worked out before before they do this, which I hope they are. I really do. I really do hope they are because I like gaming on the Sony side. I'm excited about possibly getting an Xbox so I can play Game Pass and whatever. But this could be the thing that like made me really lean more towards this PlayStation 5 side.
That'll make things tough for sure.
Yeah. Next story comes from our favorite site, NintendoLife.com. Gamers vote Nintendo DS as the console they'd most like to see make a modern comeback. If you could see the return of any classic video game console, what would you choose? That was the question put up to 1,000 UK gamers in a recent study by HyperOptic, all in a bid to see which system holds the highest nostalgia value. Sitting right at the very top of the votes is Nintendo's own DS, closely followed by both the PlayStation and the PlayStation 2. Let's see. The Nintendo DS came in at 61%. Sega Mega Drive at 57%. The Game Boy, Commodore 64 game system, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, Super NES, and like the NES isn't even on here. This list as like the top ones. That's kind of weird to me. Maybe we're finally getting old. Nobody wants
Could
an
be.
NES anymore.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that? If the DS was to make a comeback, honestly, I would actually like to. I would probably get one because I was never really into mobile gaming until the Switch came along, and now I'm like, yeah, I like gaming, like being able to sit on the couch and just have something to play in front of me.
Well, the DS was a great system. I think it had a pretty innovative concept with using the dual screens. And I think if this were to happen, you'd have to re release the actual system itself because of the way a lot of the games played. The two screens work in conjunction with each other.
Yeah,
So you'd have to have the physical console, which I'm assuming this is what this article means. But I would love it. I really liked playing games on the DS. I remember when they released Mario 64 for the DS and using both screens, and like things you would do on the bottom screen would affect things on the top.
yeah,
And it added a new element to that game and other games as well. And a lot of people I think forget how good of a system that was, and to me it's what kept Nintendo alive
yeah,
during their down years. It wasn't the Wii sold, like gangbusters, but especially during the time of the Wii U, the DS was Nintendo's golden child through that time.
yeah. And I don't think Nintendo would ever. I mean, maybe one day they might do a re-release or something. Kind of like the way they do the mini consoles. Um, Put out like a Nintendo DS reissue or something like that. With 30 games loaded onto it or something like that. But I
Mhm.
don't think Nintendo's ever gonna go back to having separate consoles and handheld devices. Now that the Switch has shown that it can handle both, that's going to be their thing moving forward. Now, as far as having maybe the next version of the Switch or whatever has like a dual screen like the DS did, now that I could see them doing something like that.
I think if they keep the Switch model, that's the next logical step.
Yeah.
And then you can re-release DS games
Yeah,
and play them the
exactly.
right way.
And I mean, that's a cool concept to have the two different screens. You could have two different things going on. Like you're playing a Zelda game, like you have playing Zelda on one screen, and then on the other screen having all your inventory and all that kind of stuff. It's just a cool concept to do.
That's exactly how Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time play
Yeah.
on the 3DS, because it actually makes things a lot easier, especially with like Ocarina of Time when you have to switch between, say, like your iron boots if you're in the water temple. Instead of having to hit pause, scroll through the menu, find your armor, your tunic, your weapons, and everything. You just click the iron boots on your menu at the bottom screen, and you're wearing them.
Yeah.
So it makes things a lot easier.
So honestly, I think that might be the next iteration of the Switch. It might be a dual screen Switch. You could be able to play it as a single screen, or then you like flip it up and it's got two screens. Like that would make the most sense to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that.
I wouldn't hate it either.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But our last news story for this week comes to us from PCGamer.com. And no, I would not like to receive notifications from you.
They haven't sent me any.
Epic Game Store adds free retro cloud gaming platform Antstream Arcade, which has over 1,000 games, including Earthworm Jim, Mortal Kombat, and a ton of ancient Atari classics. I love that they used ancient.
Yeah, thanks.
Description.
Thanks,
Yeah,
PC
right?
Gamer.
The Epic Game Store is becoming something of a PC gaming meta platform, having recently started making discrete gaming platforms available to download from its own storefront. Earlier this year, itch.io came to Epic Game Store, and now it plays host to cloud gaming platform Antstream Arcade, which lets you play over 1,200 retro games for free on your PC. My favorite four-letter word, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It has a huge games library focusing mostly on games from the 80s and early 90s. Double Dragon, Gauntlet, and Metal Slug are excellent co-op options to bash and blast your way through. The Amiga version of Barbarian is a deceptively realistic, distant ancestor of the promising Hellish Court and sensible world of soccer. Takes you back to a time when the football and its video games were more innocent. I'd love to see a full list
Yeah.
of all the games they have. The free tier is ad supported, but it still gives you access to all the games, while the premium ad free version costs £10 a month. One of the free games on Epic this week is actually a welcome pack for Antstream. So you can also find it on Steam if you play your games through Steam as well. So
Oh, awesome.
this sounds really promising, actually.
I'm gonna have to check this out because I actually have the Epic Games app on my computer. I'll have to fire it up and see if I can access the Antstream Arcade because this sounds pretty awesome, honestly.
Yeah, I would love to, like I said, see a full list of what they have. And yeah, I mean, ads don't really bother me if I know I'm getting something for free.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I'll do if I check this out, but sounds really cool.
Well, looking at some of the ones they have in the picture here, I mean, they have things like the arcade version of Akari Warriors, karate on the Atari 2600 version of just karate. That's all it is, karate.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat, Zingson, however you pronounce that. Some pretty cool looking stuff. Galaga. I mean, this looks like it might definitely be something worth checking out.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, same.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of the news. Let's go ahead and move into this month in video game history. In December of 1980, Data East releases the Deco, I guess that's how you say it, Deco cassette system, the first standardized arcade platform for which many games are developed. I think we talked about this before. It was didn't it have? Oh, I was might have been thinking about something else, but I remember we talked about something in uh, video game history where they actually had it almost looked like VHS tapes where they put it into the arcade machines. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I can't remember if this was it specifically. I want to say it might have had a different name, but are the the inner workings of arcade machines fascinate me because like the technology to me is completely foreign. Like I know the only thing I know about the inner workings of arcade machines is when we talk about it during this
Yeah.
segment. So it says here the arcade owner would buy a base cabinet while the games were stored on standard audio cassettes. I remember us talking about that.
Yeah.
They would insert the cassette and a security dongle into the cabinet. It's crazy to think that it works off something as simple as that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I used to have the audio cassette or the cassette player for the Commodore 64, and that's how we used to save games back in the day. It was just on regular cassette tapes.
Uh, Cassette tapes.
Yeah.
So fun. That and VHS.
Uh, I'm so glad we're. I mean, I love collecting VHS tapes, but man, I'm so glad we're beyond that technology now.
Well, I remember getting I think there were like 8 or 9 hour blank tapes, and I would record episodes of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh yeah.
I still have some of those tapes at my parents' house. I have at least like 5 or 6 of those, like slam full of episodes of that show.
Oh yeah.
December of 1981, Jump Bug, the first scrolling platform game, is distributed in North America by Rockola under license from Sega.
Jump Bug. Do I remember this game? I don't think
I know
I
we've
do.
talked about it before because I recognize poster, and
Yeah,
it screams early '80s. Reminds me a little bit of the poster from Burger Time as far as the
yeah, it
animation
does.
style.
Yeah, but I don't think I've ever played Jump Bug though. It's definitely not. It's not a classic.
No, it'd be one of those obscure games that I'd be interested in trying though.
Yeah. December 1982, Atari releases E.T. the Extraterrestrial, written in 5.5 weeks. It's one of the games that sparks the video game crash of 1983. It's definitely the final nail in the coffin. It's not the game that caused the crash, but it was definitely the final nail in the coffin for the video game crash. And yeah, I remember getting that game as a kid, and I still have it with my Atari 2600. But man, that game was not good at all.
So I've never played the actual game before. I want to review it for this show.
I think we should actually. They our Discord community has asked us to review it before, jokingly, and I'm like, you know what? I think
They know better though. They
We-
know better, like because I'll do it. I will totally do it.
we might actually have to. I wonder if there's a way. I mean, I could pull out the 2600, and fire it up, and play it. But I wonder if there's a way I can emulate it somewhere. That way, I don't have to do all that.
Yeah, that's how I would have to do it. We should find it and review it next month.
Okay.
Make
I'm
it
o-
one of start the year off right.
Yeah, with ET, the extraterrestrial for Atari 2600. What are we doing to ourselves?
And it will be in that week that I will get kicked off the show permanently. Oh man. I whenever I posted this, I was like, you know what? We should review it. Like it should just happen. So
I think we should. I mean, there's an
Yeah.
actual way to play the game there's like a story, and there's certain ways that we'd have to look up some sort of walkthrough to be able to play
Yeah,
the game.
yeah. I wonder if I'll quit that game sooner than I did Superman 64.
I don't know. Maybe we should time ourselves.
We should.
Because I know that maybe if we play it with a walkthrough, we might actually be able to get somewhere. But that was the whole problem with the game is nobody knew what the hell to do in the game. It's not intuitive at all.
My favorite kind of games.
You just keep falling into holes and like, it just sucks.
Well, moving on to some better games. December 17th, 1984, Nintendo releases Ice Climber and Balloon Fight for the Famicom.
I love Balloon Fight. Balloon Fight is such an underrated game for the Nintendo.
Balloon Fight's a classic, and Ice Climbers, I never played the Ice Climber game. I learned about them when they were included in Super Smash Brothers. I'm like, who the hell are these two?
I still don't think I've ever played Ice Climber. To this day, I don't think I've ever played Ice Climber.
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, it was Melee they were introduced in. Like, I had no clue who they were, but I was like, sure enough, they're from an old video game back in the 80s.
Yeah, Balloon Fight is fun though. If you've never played Balloon Fight, I think it's actually available on the Switch, the NES, online. You can play it.
I believe you're right.
It's sort of like Joust, kind of.
It's one of those games that, like, if you're looking for something fairly simple to play,
yeah, it's a fun two-player game. If you can find somebody else to play it with, it's really fun.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very simple, but it's fun. December 19th of 1986, Nintendo releases Kid Icarus in Japan. I almost reviewed that for this week, but I was like, I want to actually put some time into Kid Icarus because I've been playing it off and on the last few months, but man, that game starts out brutally hard.
Yeah, I've played it very briefly, but I do remember that specifically. Where it's just like,
and I've heard, people have told me that it actually gets a little easier as you go along. People have said the same thing about Fester's Quest. Like, well, you got to kind of grind to get better weapons because there's no learning curve. It just kind of throws you to the wolves. And same with Kid Icarus. It's like it just starts out hard.
Well, I remember because I never played the game growing up, but I remember Pit was included in Smash Brothers Brawl, and that sparked a little bit of a comeback because he got a new game for the 3DS, Kid Icarus Uprising.
Yeah,
which I never played, but I thought the fact that he was included in Smash Brothers and people online I remember seemed to love it, and it was enough to get a new game out of it.
Well,
so.
it seems like it would be the kind of game that they could very easily move to a 3D world, sort of a la Zelda. But I mean, it might be a little too close to what Zelda is, and that's probably why they haven't. But the flight mechanic might be something interesting to work with. I don't know. I don't know what Nintendo has planned for Kid Icarus. I've heard rumblings of a Kid Icarus reboot, new game, but I've been hearing that for like 7-8 years now. So it's been a long time.
I think the better question would be, do they know what they want to do with Kid
exactly.
And finally, December 18th, 1987, a day that will live in video game infamy. Square's Hironobu Sakaguchi releases Final Fantasy for the Famicom in Japan. Originally intended to be the company's last release, the game's success resulted in a prolific series and was released in the U.S. 3 years later. Crazy to think a world without Square.
Yeah.
So many great RPGs would not have been made.
Yeah, but to know that they unleashed Final Fantasy upon the world is a bit unforgivable.
True. Well, you take the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah, you take the bad, take the good, take the bad, play Final Fantasy, and there you have the facts of gaming or what. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've played quite a few games from Square that I do like. So
Yeah, Square's a
overall, I'm
good
happy they did not go out of business.
Square's a great publisher. They make great games, and I kid about Final Fantasy, but if you guys want me to do a Final Fantasy game, you're either going to have to get us to $100 a month on Patreon, or you're going to have to get to 100 signatures, and I don't think either one's going to happen before January.
Well, you never know.
We'll
The
see.
the the month is very young.
But speaking of Patreon, we like to do Patreon shoutouts where all the lovely people that keep us afloat every single month, we like to shout them out right here on the show. So, Derek, would you like to shout out our lovely patrons?
I would love to. We want to shout out Axblade07, Daniel Salmon, Armez Jackson, Hand Solo, Carlos Longoria, aka I Am the Rampage, Staff Sergeant Sketch, Brandon Rutledge, Gus and Penny, Matthew Salmon, Joey Image, Ron Johnson, Mixmaster, and Mike Eveland. Thank you all so much for your continued contributions. And Jason and I were actually discussing this before we started recording. We have dropped below the $50 level again. And for those that are recurring Patreon subscribers, because I ran into this issue earlier today, be sure to check to make sure that Patreon is processing your payment, because it didn't process any of mine through the multiple Patreons that I'm subscribed to. So definitely go check. You may have to do it every month or every other month. I know it can be annoying.
Yeah,
I don't know why it's that way.
it's just Patreon. I mean, it sucks, but I mean, it's the way
Yeah.
we make money, so it's kind of hard to move elsewhere when there's nowhere else to move to.
Yeah, so definitely check that. And as another side note, for new Patreons, be sure to send us your social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, so we can give you a proper shout out. If you want to be a part of our Patreon, we just did a really fun commentary track for Toy Story that's available on Patreon now, and you get early access to so many other commentary tracks that we do, such as Clue, Super Mario Brothers, Big Trouble in Little China, or just a few of the really fun ones that we've done. We post polls on what you'd like us to review. So if you want to be a part of that awesome community, just head on over to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro.
And tonight we're going to be talking about Golden Axe is a side-scrolling beat-em-up hack-and-slash arcade video game released in 1989 by Sega for the System 16B arcade hardware. Makoto Uchida was the primary developer of the game and also was responsible for the creation of Altered Beast. Several ports of the game were created, most notably for the Mega Drive Genesis and Master System. And I will be talking about the Sega Genesis version of the game because this weekend I fired up my Genesis Mini just to see, because I haven't fired it up in a while. So I fired it up just to see, if I wanted to play anything. And I remember we were talking about Alex Kidd a few weeks ago. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I've ever played the Alex Kidd. It's called In the Enchanted Castle. Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle for the Sega Genesis on the Mini, and I fired it up and I was playing it, and that game is terrible. the controls are awful. It's no wonder Alex Kidd was not the mascot that they wanted him to be. The kind of the Mario compatriot. He's just not that at all. They're so lucky that they came up with Sonic the Hedgehog, because Alex Kidd was not going to do it. And I don't know why people like those games, because that was the most terrible, awful control scheme I've ever played in a side-scroller.
Well, now I know not to play that game, so
Yeah.
I appreciate
It's
the heads
not
up.
good. I played it for maybe 30 minutes, and I could barely get past the first stage. It's that bad. It's like,
Ugh.
it's the kind of controls where not only is your punching and kicking like way too short, but the hit boxes are crazy on your character. Like, I try to punch something and I would die before I could even get a punch off. And when you jump, you have to do platforming, and it's sort of like the Noid, where it feels like you're on an ice level on every level, even though you're not on ice. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this at all. So I started playing Golden Axe. I was like, you know what? I really like Golden Axe. I haven't played this game in forever. So I started playing it and played it for a while on Sunday and played all three different characters. And the story of the game is, in ancient times, a race of ruthless giants appeared from the darkness of the world and challenged the great gods to a battle. Both forces fought to a stalemate, and the fight seemed to last forever. But the fight suddenly came to an end when the power of giants had been contained and they were driven away back to the darkness. Battle was over, but it led to the demise of many of those who had fought. Those left alive in the land of the gods honed a weapon, the Golden Axe. After a long time, humans began to emerge in the form of land of the gods. The Golden Axe already left the hand of the gods, and the land was reigned by humans. One of the evil giants that had survived, Death Adder, tricked the humans and took the axe. Evil forces returned to the land, starting an era of darkness. And of course, you have three different characters that you can play as. You can play as a barbarian, and each character gets their own. Not only do they have melee, because the barbarian has a sword. You have what was her? I'm trying to find the names of the character, but you have a dwarf character that, of course, has a two-handed axe, and you have Tyrus Flare, an Amazon wielding a long sword, and she probably has the best magic powers out of the three. Definitely the strongest. I liked using her character because she had the best magic powers, but I like using the dwarf because he had the longest reach with the axe and probably the strongest melee character in the game. And it's pretty much your basic side-scrolling hack and slash. You're going through the levels, and the level design still to this day looks great on this game. The movements are a little bit stiff, but that's kind of to be understood. I mean, you're talking about an 80s era side-scroller and definitely an early game for the Sega Genesis. But what was amazing is how you could get that arcade that close to an arcade experience on the Sega Genesis, a home console at that time. Like, it was just kind of amazing.
Well, and I haven't had a chance to play this game yet. I've scrolled past it several times and playing the Genesis Mini, and I've been intrigued by it. I've just never gone back and played it, and I didn't really even know what it was about, but just the cover art kind of intrigued me, and I looked up some screenshots and watched a little bit of gameplay. The graphics remind me a little bit of one of the games that I talked about very early on in the show, Illusion of Gaia, for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
As far as the backgrounds and the way the characters look, they look maybe a little more detailed, which is interesting because it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up type game. But it looks like a lot of fun, and I think the backgrounds and the level design look great. And still, that's what I love about games from that era, is that they still hold up to this day. And there are games for the Switch, I'm there for other consoles too, but I'm just using the Switch as the main example, that still have that same look, and it still holds up to this day.
Yeah, I mean, the backgrounds, like the detail in the backgrounds looks great. It's got that really cool kind of old D&D look to it, medieval type of scenery. And then, of course, the character designs are really great. They're fun to look at, and there's so many different bad guy, different types of bad guys to fight throughout the game. You're not just fighting like the same looking characters over and over again. There's a lot of variation in the different character types, and it's just a really fun, beat 'em up side-scrolling hack and slash. Like, if that's your thing, that's Golden Axe is kind of like the original. I wouldn't say I don't know if it's the original, but it's definitely the one that stands out the most from this era. Like Golden Axe was always in the arcades, always at like pizzerias and things of that nature. Like it was just one of those games that was everywhere. And I they even have a Golden Axe arcade one up set up at the GameStop near my house, and I was actually tempted not too long ago when I went in there because it's a beautiful machine. You know that little arcade one up stand up.
I haven't seen that one. I didn't even know that anything existed.
Yeah, they had it in there. It was plugged in. I don't think you could play it because of COVID protocols and stuff, but it looked beautiful. And that's the thing. Like even on just the Genesis version, it's almost a perfect port of the arcade version. And
Which you didn't get a lot of back then.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Like even Nintendo, you didn't get a great port of arcade titles until the Super Nintendo came along, and then they could really do arcade ports. Like you look at the Nintendo couldn't do it. I mean, that's why you got.
No.
I mean, yeah, Turtles, the arcade game was fun, but it wasn't near what the actual arcade game was. And then you could actually have that with the Turtles in Time with the Super Nintendo. And then it's like, okay, this looks exactly like the arcade game, you know?
Yeah. How would you compare this to other side-scrolling beat 'em up games from that time? Like when I think of side-scrolling beat 'em ups, I think of like Double Dragon.
It's definitely not as fast paced. Like it's a little bit slower. Like your characters move a little slower. It's definitely not something you're gonna try to speed run. It's not. It's not like Final Fight. Like yeah, I mean yeah, Final Fight can be a little slow, but your characters move fast, and and even with games like Streets of Rage and stuff like that, like those are fast paced games. This is very slow, like swinging swords. And you have little goblins that come through the stage every once in a while, and you kick them, and they release magic little magic vials that you collect, and you get those, and you can kind of save them up throughout the level. And like I said, what's her name again? Let me look it up real quick. What was her name?
The Amazon?
Yeah, the Amazon.
Is it Tyrus Flare?
Yeah, Tyrus Flare. She has the one where you could collect 6 of them. And the more you collect, the more powerful it's going to be when you use it. So with her, if you get all the way up to 6 and you get to the boss, you can pretty much just hit that and almost get the bosses to where they're almost dead. And so that's pretty easy to do with her. And of course, you only get to do that one time, and then you have to build it back up again. It's not something you can use over and over again. It's something you definitely you want to save your magic power for when you absolutely 100% need it, or you're going to die.
Right. The thing that intrigues me the most about this game, and it's something that I don't think people really think of when you think of this type of game, the story sounds kind of interesting. Like it sounds like something you would see in like a Conan the Barbarian movie, or
Yeah.
like a movie of that type.
It's exactly like that. It's sort of like in between each stage, you kind of have like a Castlevania type map where it shows you where the next area you're going to, and it gives you a little bit of more of the story every time you go in between each level, so you can kind of see yourself getting closer and closer to where you need, where the final battle is going to be, or whatever. And so, like I said, you actually get story with this game. It has a story to it. It's not just a straight, no, not kind of like Double Dragon where you don't really get a story. You just know that your girlfriend got punched in the stomach and you have to go save her. Like that's all really all the story you get for that game. But this one, they actually put like time and effort into the actual story of it.
I like that, especially with this type of a game, because, like we said, it's not really what this genre is known for. So to
Yeah.
hear that that's actually a big part of it is actually really good to hear.
And what's cool about it is it's got great music too. Each level has its own theme. You're not listening to the same music over and over again. Every time you go to a different area, a different stage, you have new music. And that I like that a lot. Like there's something to
Yeah.
be said for games like the original Super Mario Brothers where you kind of get that, that the music's so good it doesn't matter that it's kind of the same thing over and over again because it just sort of that's what we had and that's why we know those songs so well. But then you got some games where like the Ghostbusters game a few weeks ago, where you're going to hear that same thing through the entire game, and it gets real old real fast. But then you got games like this, and Ninja Gaiden did the same thing, where each level had its own separate soundtrack, like theme. And this is exactly like that. Each level has a different set of music, and it's really good music. It's not crap.
And that's another thing I was curious about that as well was the quality of the music because we're both fans of 8-bit and 16-bit music from that era because it's also to me timeless as well.
Yeah.
I'll find myself and I'll go back and listen to the soundtrack from say like Link to the Past or Super Mario World or other games from the Super Nintendo because that style of music is still just so good.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's interesting as we brought up Conan the Barbarian. The lead producer of the game was actually fond of action movies, specifically Conan the Barbarian, and
Yeah.
wanted to create a game that was influenced by those movies. And especially from the poster alone, like that's what I instantly thought of was that shot of Arnold with the just his like 8-pack.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm pretty sure he had more than a 6-pack.
Yeah, the cover
Just
sort of looks like a cross between like Conan and like Beastmaster, like those type of
yes,
movies.
yep,
but uh,
absolutely.
but definitely, in my opinion, the actual barbarian of the game is the worst character in the game. I hated using him. He sucks. I like the other two characters way better.
Yeah, I'm very interested to try this game out now. Now that I've heard your take on it and I've seen a little bit of gameplay on it, I want to fire up the Genesis Mini and try it because, like I said, I've thought about it several times, but just never pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah, there's also rideable monsters in the game. I forgot to mention this. Like every once in a while, you'll come across some enemies that are riding different monsters, and there's this one. I didn't know this was what it was called until I looked at the wiki here, which is on goldenaxe.com or goldenaxe.fandom.com/wiki. And this thing is known. It's the weirdest looking animal. I think it's in the first stage, and it's known as the chicken leg, and it first appeared in Altered Beast, and it can be used to knock down enemies with the swipe of its tail. And the funniest one was the female character and the dwarf both look normal when they're riding it, but when the barbarian rides it, he's all like, and I don't know if they meant for him to like look like that when he's riding it, but he looks so stupid when he's riding it. It's so dumb.
They should have named it the Drumstick.
Yeah, and of course they have blue dragon and red dragons. I think the blue dragons are the ones that shoot fire breath, and the red dragons shoot fireballs.
Okay.
Those are pretty cool. I like when I come across the dragons in the game.
Because what's a medieval setting game if you don't have a dragon?
Exactly, and of course most of your bosses throughout the game are the giants. Like the first level is you fight two giants, and then the second level I think it's two more giants, and then you get to the third level, and it's like this one giant, but he's wearing like this crazy armor, and he has like a fire sword. Like each level, you fight like a different giant or a pair of giants at the end of each level. So that's why I say, if you're going through the level, try to save your magic attacks if you can until you get to the boss, because you're definitely going to need it.
For sure. Something that is interesting to me is on the Wikipedia page, especially looking at the list of platforms that this game's available on, goes from arcade to Sega Genesis, the Master System, Commodore 64. Was also released on the Xbox 360 and PS3.
Hmm.
It's also available on mobile devices. So this game has had some serious staying power,
Oh yeah,
which is extremely impressive to me.
yeah. Let me look. I was trying to find that. I can't see where you see that on the wiki page, but yeah, all
It's
the
on
different
the Wikipedia page.
yeah all the different ports and remakes of this game. You know, it's been on every single. I think every single Sega Genesis Classic collection that's been out for the last 30 years. This game is on it, and it's for a reason. It's a great game. It's a fun game. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this game, other than it's paced a little slow, but I'm okay with that. You know, the older I get, I'm kind of okay with a slower paced action fighting game.
Yeah, I feel you on that, and I've been kind of wanting to go back and play something with a little more methodical pace because I find myself finding games that are fast paced
Yeah.
that I can just sit down for 20 minutes, play it, and then I'm done. Like I kind of want to play something with a little more story and a little more methodical pace to it.
And I think it would be a fun game to play two player. Uh, if you get your girlfriend or wife or friend or whoever you got to sit down and play this with you, I think you're gonna have a lot of fun playing this game. It definitely feels like it should be a two-player game because sometimes it does get kind of rough with all the enemies on the screen. So it's kind of like you're like, yeah, this was meant to be a played as two-player during this part because there's a lot of enemies on screen. But other than that, it's still a pretty fun single-player game to play. And even you only get 3 continues, but I mean, you can still get pretty far into the game, even if you're not that good, by just going through it and taking your time and watching what you're doing. It's not a punishing game. It's not like it's not like Ghouls and Ghosts or anything like that where the game is made to punish you. Like this game doesn't feel like that. This game feels like the kind of game that maybe the reason it was so popular in the arcades is because you could put 1 quarter in it and play for a pretty decent amount of time.
I think the fact that you said it's not like Super Ghouls and Ghost is that's enough of a selling point right there.
Yeah, it's not a punishing game by any means. It's not frustrating like where you can't even get through the first level. It's just like Ghouls and Ghosts or Ghosts and Goblins, whichever version you've ever played. Like that game is just punishing. Like it wants your quarters. That's what that game was made for, was to be in the arcade and to kill you as fast as possible so that you'll keep pumping quarters in. But this game seems like, hey, come on over, put a quarter in. You can play for a good 10, 15 minutes.
It's a light eater.
Yeah, yeah, and I like it.
Yeah. So what score wise, what would you give it?
It's not a perfect game because yeah, it's got its flaws. It's sometimes the hit detection's a little weird. It's one of those games where you got to kind of be on this. It's that 3/4 view where you got to be on the same plane as the other person to hit them. That gets a little wonky sometimes, but I think that kind of knocks at least a point or two off. So I'm gonna say this game. I mean, this game's a solid C. It's a good 7 out of 10. It's a good solid C of a game.
I respect that.
It's definitely worth playing.
I think
It, you know,
that's what it seems like from what little I've seen of it.
yeah. If you have any of the Sega Genesis collections or you have the Genesis Mini, play Golden Axe if you've never played it before. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Now I'm excited to check it out.
But that's going to bring us to the end of the episode. A little bit slower paced episode this week, which is okay because
It's fitting.
yeah, it's fitting. We're entering the end into the Christmas season. Everything's hectic out in the world. It's nice to just kind of sit here and unwind for a second.
Absolutely.
But what do you got going on with the feature Prez Pod?
So launched the Patreon today, and for those who are interested in possibly subscribing and checking it out. It's interesting because the actual show doesn't launch until next month, but I wanted to go ahead and start the Patreon because fan interaction is going to be the backbone of the show.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 polls up for uh, watch along commentary track, for a roundtable discussion, as well as a top 5 list. So you can vote on those. And I've got the original episode of the Nerd Cave podcast, the very first podcast
Ooh.
I ever did from May of 2013, is on the Patreon feed. And longtime listeners know about the short film I did a couple of years ago, The
Mhm.
Parker Syndrome. Well, I've mentioned this before. There's an original version that I did right when I got out of college back in 2008. That full film is on the feature presentation Patreon.
Really?
So you've got quite a bit of content. And I'm going to be posting more stuff throughout the month. I've got a couple of interviews in the can already. I'm going to post one probably next week, and then I'll do another the week after. So as we get closer to the show launch, I'm going to basically let everybody know what the schedule is for, like, what week I'm going to release retro audio, new videos, things like that. So a lot of stuff going on. And then on social media, I'm actually doing a Christmas movie tournament that you can vote on Twitter and Instagram. So if you want to follow the new show on social media, it's at Feature Prez Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And man, poor Christmas Story. It just got destroyed.
What I feel like Wally was like a mafia hitman
Yeah.
that just put the word out. And I'm sure Christmas Story, I think, is like still sleeping at the bottom of the bay.
Yeah, it just got steamrolled by the Muppet community. Poor Ralphie.
I'll be I'll be I'll be very curious because I could see Muppet Christmas Carol making it pretty far.
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
so originally I was only gonna do 8 movies, but the polls have been doing so well that I think I'm gonna increase it to 16,
Awesome.
and then just go through it up until Christmas. I
Yeah.
will
I
I will
like a
say
good
this:
bracket system.
at some point, the movies Die Hard and Batman Returns will be included, as they should.
And they should not be up against one another.
No, they won't be.
Because I'm sorry, I love Batman Returns, but Die Hard will destroy it. I'll say that without even having to see a poll.
I want the finals to be Die Hard versus Christmas Vacation.
That's a tough one.
Be a very tough one. Me personally, like, I think Christmas Vacation would just barely edge it out for me, but it's close.
Yeah, that's. I don't even think I could. I don't even want to vote on that. Like, I love those two movies equally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So lot of fun stuff going on social media. So just follow me at Feature Prez Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Fantastic. I went over and followed you on Patreon a little while ago. I'm gonna wait till the
Nice.
holidays before I sub up.
No, I appreciate it.
But yeah, we just did another episode of Open Micers earlier tonight with Mo Alexander returning to the show. And the things we discussed this episode, I just want to say, if you're going to go listen to it, parental discretion is advised. So head over to...
use headphones.
Yes, please. Headphones, don't let the children near. And it's at Open Micers on Twitter and Instagram. So, yeah.
Did I ever tell you the story of how there was a stand-up comedy show at the Blue Wahoo Stadium like a year or so ago?
No.
So it was for a local college. There were 3 stand-up comedians, and I can't remember their names. I wish I could, because that would make the story so much better. I had to work it because they wanted, like a camera op, and we had to use like our PA system and everything. And it's notorious for being a family-friendly environment. And I'm thinking, there's no way that this is going to happen because I've been to multiple stand-up comedy shows, and I know that they are not like that at all.
Did they know they were supposed to not? Were they to keep it
I,
not blue?
from what I was told, they were told that. However, the first comedian, and I have to explicitly say it because it would just butcher the story if I didn't. The first comedian, he grabs the microphone, and there's probably about, I'd say, around 100 people that are there. Walks up on stage, grabs the microphone, and goes, "How the fuck y'all doing?" And I'm like, "Well, we're just." I told the director that was on headset, I said, "Put your seatbelt on, because we're going for a ride."
Yeah.
It was hilarious, though.
Wow.
I loved it.
That's awesome.
Fun stories. One day I'm gonna write a book about my experiences.
You
there.
should. I think you should. I think that would be an interesting read.
We'll see what happens.
But that's going to bring us to the end of the show. Is there anything else you need to tell the people before we get out of here tonight?
Oh, real quick. Next week I'm gonna review Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy for the PlayStation 2, and this Friday is actually the 20-year anniversary of that game. It's if people don't know about it, it's a platforming game made by Naughty Dog that was their next attempt to create a franchise after Crash Bandicoot. So I've been playing it on the PS4. They're doing a sale right now where you can get all 4 games for $20. So took advantage of that, and I've had a lot of fun going back and playing it. So excited to talk about it next week.
And we have a very special episode coming up mid-December, December 15th. It's going to be, I don't even want to say it. I'm going to keep it close to the vest, but we're going to have a few people on the show that night to talk about a very special Star Wars game. I'll just say that.
Yes.
So be prepared. Be prepared. But I'm going to go ahead and play our music here. If you'd like to email us, you can email us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. We are at nerdcaveretro.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdcaveretro, Instagram and Twitter at nerdcaveretro, and of course individually at jfunktastic and at Derek_Diamond. Go get our merch at ncrmerch.com. Now is the time because they're running a sale this week. Go get your NCR merch. Get it in time for Christmas. And, of course, we have our Patreon at patreon.com/nerdcaveretro, where as little as $1 a month helps us keep the lights on and keeps us, if you keep us above the $50 level, we'll keep doing the commentary tracks every single month. And if you can't do that, times are tough. I understand. Leave us a review wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. So, Derek, please tell them what it's all about.
May the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
Yes.
A fellow chucker, eh?
And that's an episode.
Fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. Thank you guys for watching on Twitch, and everybody's going to be watching on YouTube. We will see you guys next week.